Hello, my dear friends. Thank you for opening your hearts and making space for my story today. Before I begin, I'd love to feel your presence. Please take a moment and share the city you're joining me from in the comments. It truly helps to know I'm not speaking into an empty room, that you're out there, listening. To understand the depth of the wound, you must first understand the love that built the heart it would later break. My name is Marguerite. For 66 years, I believed my purpose, my entire worth, was measured in the sacrifices I could make for my daughter, Grace. My own mother, may she rest in peace, was a seamstress. Her hands, always slightly stained with thread dye, were the gentlest hands I've ever known. We had very little money, but our small home was rich with something else, the unshakable belief that family was everything. I can still hear her voice, steady as a heartbeat, as she taught me to sew a straight line. Margaret, mija, in this life, the only thing that matters is family. And for family, you give everything, to the very last drop of your blood. Those words weren't just advice, they became the blueprint of my soul. When I was 18, I found myself pregnant and filled with a hope so bright it felt like a new sun. Grace's father promised me the world, a future, a family. But hope can be a fragile thing. One morning, I woke up and he was simply gone, vanished. When I, heavy with child, went to his parents' house, they slammed the door in my face. "Our son isn't going to ruin his future for some random girl," a voice hissed through the wood. I stood on that porch, the world crumbling around me, feeling more alone than I ever thought possible. But my mother showed me what strength truly was. She didn't cry. She didn't wail about the shame. She took my face in her worn hands, looked into my tear-filled eyes, and said, "That child is going to have everything we couldn't. We'll raise her together. She is going to be a good woman." And then she did the unimaginable. She sold her only 2 gold bracelets, the last remnants of a difficult but loved life, her only real treasures. With that money, she bought a crib, tiny clothes, and a soft yellow blanket. She was building a fortress of love around us before my daughter even took her first breath. The day Grace was born, it was as if the universe had gifted me a piece of its own light. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, with a thatch of dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom in the world. In that moment, I made a sacred vow to my newborn daughter. I would move heaven and earth to give her the life I never had. And so, at 19, I began cleaning houses. My world became a cycle of dawn to dusk work. The smell of bleach and lemon polish, the ache in my back from scrubbing floors, the raw, chapped skin on my hands, it all became a badge of honor. Every streak-free window, every spotless floor was another brick in the future I was building for her. I remember one day so clearly. It was Grace's first day of kindergarten. We couldn't afford the bus, so we walked. I had spent an hour the night before ironing her little uniform until it was perfect, polishing her small shoes until they shone. As we walked, other mothers pulled up in fancy cars, dressed in beautiful clothes. I felt a pang of shame, standing there in my second-hand patched dress, my hands rough and red. But then Grace looked up at me. She took my calloused hand in her tiny, soft one, kissed my cheek and said, "Thank you, Mom. You're the best in the world." In that instant, every judgmental glance, every moment of exhaustion melted away. It was all worth it. For her, it was all worth it. When my mother passed away, a part of me went with her. Grace was only 8. On her deathbed, my mother held my hand with a fading strength and made me a promise. "Margaret, That child is your greatest treasure. Give her an education. Give her love, and she will take care of you when you're old. Our family's blood is good. She won't fail you." That promise became my oxygen. I worked like a woman possessed. 4 houses, 7 days a week. There was no luxury, no rest. There was only the goal. When Grace turned 15, she wanted a party. A real one like the girls in magazines had. For 6 months, I took on extra work, saving every spare cent. I spent $3,500, money I had been saving to finally fix our leaky roof. But the night of the party, seeing her in a golden dress, laughing with her friends, her face glowing with happiness, I would have fixed 100 leaky roofs for that sight. She hugged me and whispered, "Mom, I don't know how you give me so much when you have almost nothing. When I grow up, I'm going to give all this back to you, multiplied by 1,000. Then came college. Business administration. The bill was $15,000 a year. I was only earning $400 a month. The math was a cruel joke. But a mother doesn't see math. She sees miracles. I went to the bank and took a loan, using my house, the only thing I truly owned, as collateral. I sold the engagement ring her father had given me, the last physical reminder of a foolish dream, and with a heart heavy with grief, I sold my mother's sewing machine. It felt like I was selling a piece of her soul, but I told myself it was for a greater soul. The day I took Grace to enroll, I held her shoulders and said, "I couldn't go to college, but you are going to be a professional. You will work in an office with air conditioning. You will never, ever have to clean other people's houses like your mother." I cried that day. Tears of joy, of pride, of a hope so fierce it felt like a physical force. For 4 years, I sustained that hope. I ate beans and tortillas for weeks on end so she could have money for books, for projects, for clothes that wouldn't make her feel out of place among her wealthier peers. My body was tired, but my spirit was soaring. And then, graduation day. Seeing my daughter walk across that stage in her tap-in gown, hearing her name echo through the auditorium, it was the culmination of every sacrifice, every tired muscle, every silent prayer. She found me in the crowd, her eyes streaming with tears, and hugged me so tightly I could feel her heartbeat against mine. "Mom," she sobbed, "this is as much yours as it is mine. I would never have made it here without you. I promise you, now that I'm a professional, you will never have to suffer again." I believed her. With every fiber of my being, I believed her. The long, hard years were over. I had kept my promise to my mother. I had poured every last drop of my blood, sweat, and love into my daughter. And now I could finally rest. Or so I thought. My daughter, Gracie's graduation, a moment of pure, triumphant joy. I truly believed the hard years were behind us. The foundation of sacrifice had been laid, and now we would build a beautiful future upon it together. For a little while, it seemed that dream was coming true. Grace got a good job. She met Richard. He seemed acceptable. He had a stable position as a supervisor, was polite to me, and made Grace smile. When he came to me, hat in hand, to formally ask for her hand in marriage, I cried tears of pure emotion. My daughter would have the stable, secure family I could never give her. The wedding was another mountain to climb. Grace wanted the kind of elegant celebration she'd seen in magazines. The venue, the dress, the flowers, it cost $10,000. Money I didn't have. So I took out another loan. I sold the last pieces of jewelry I owned. I told myself it was an investment in her happiness, the final great sacrifice. The first years of their marriage were sweet. They visited every Sunday without fail. The smell of a roasting chicken would fill my house, and the sound of their laughter would weave itself into the very fabric of my home. Grace would press money into my hand for groceries. "Mom, now it's my turn to take care of you," she'd say, and my heart would swell with a sense of completion. This was the reward. This was what my mother had promised me. But then the weather began to change. It started 3 years ago, so subtly I almost missed it. Richard lost his job. The phone calls, which were once filled with lighthearted chatter, now had a new, strained tone. "Mom, we're in a bit of a bind. Could you possibly spare $1,000 for the mortgage?" What mother could say no? I wrote the check, my heart aching for their stress. Then it was, "Mom, the car broke down. The repair is $2,500. Again, I gave. This was what family did. Then came the big one. "Mom, we're drowning in credit card debt. We need $3,000 or they'll ruin our credit." A cold knot tightened in my stomach, but I saw the panic in Grace's eyes. I gave them the money. I told myself I was being their lifeline. But after that $3,000 check, the atmosphere shifted. The requests for money stopped, but so did the warmth. It was as if a silent frost had settled over our relationship. The Sunday visits became less frequent. "We're so busy with Richard's new job, Mom, you understand." The phone calls grew shorter, rushed. I'd call and hear, "I'm in a meeting," or "I'm at the store," or "It's late, we'll talk tomorrow." That tomorrow became a ghost, always retreating before me. Then came the comments, slipped into conversation like a thin, sharp blade. "Mom," Grace said one day, her voice laced with a false concern that made my skin prickle. "Richard says he's noticed you've been very forgetful lately. Are you sure you're okay living alone in that big house?" I laughed it off, a nervous, uncomfortable sound. "Don't be silly, honey. I'm fine." But the seed was planted. Was I becoming a burden? Was I losing my grip? The most chilling moment came when I decided to surprise them. I baked Richard's favorite pineapple dessert and went to their apartment. Through the door, I could hear laughter and the murmur of voices, but when I knocked, it took them a long time to answer. When Grace finally opened the door, her smile was a tight, painted-on thing that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Mom, what a surprise. We were just, organizing some work papers." Inside, sitting at their kitchen table, was her cousin, Carol. You remember Carol, the one who worked at the county clerk's office? The table was littered with documents, and when I walked in, Carol scrambled to gather them all up, shoving them into a folder as if they were on fire. My eyes, still sharp despite what they implied, caught my name on one of the pages before it disappeared. "Why would you need papers with my name on them?" I asked, my curiosity genuine, my unease growing. Grace and Carol exchanged a look, a quick, silent flash of understanding that excluded me completely. "It's just to update the beneficiaries on our insurance, Mom. You know, in case something happens to us, you're our only family." It sounded logical. It sounded caring. But why did it feel like a lie? After that, the exclusion became more deliberate. They invited me to lunch at a nice restaurant. I arrived, dressed up and looking forward to it, and waited for an hour. They never came. "Oh, Mom, we forgot to tell you, Richard had a work emergency." This happened not once, but 3 times. The 4th time, sitting alone at that table, surrounded by happy families, I felt a fool. A lonely, forgotten fool. I found out from my neighbor, Miss Rose, that they'd hosted a big barbecue for Richard's birthday. "How strange you weren't there, Margaret," she said innocently. When I asked Grace, she waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, it was just a last-minute, informal thing. We didn't want to bother you." The final, masterful stroke of their campaign was when they asked to move in with me. "They're painting our apartment, Mom. We'll only stay a month. It'll be like old times." My lonely heart leaped at the chance. Finally, I would have my family close again. I would get my daughter back. But from the moment they crossed the threshold with their suitcases, my home was no longer my own. Richard became a critic. "Aunt, this TV is ancient. The internet is so slow. The water pressure in this shower is pathetic." He'd sigh and say, "At your age, maintaining such a big property must be so difficult." Grace began a silent takeover. She started reorganizing my kitchen, donating my old plates, the ones I'd saved to buy when Grace was a child, telling me they were too old. She went through my closet, criticizing my clothes, suggesting we donate them. And the whispers. I would walk into a room and their conversation would die mid-sentence, replaced by a sudden heavy interest in the weather. They began to control my life under the guise of helping. "Mom, let me handle the bills. You shouldn't be worrying about these things at your age." But then I'd find her going through my bank statements, questioning every withdrawal. "Mom, why do you need $200 in cash?" The most painful moments were overhearing them talk about me. I was in the garden, trimming my roses, when I heard Richard on the phone. "My mother-in-law is getting harder to handle. She's so stubborn." And I heard Grace laugh in the background and add, "It's true. She's becoming so difficult." They started lying about my mind to others. When my dear friend Letitia visited, Grace said, "Oh, Letitia, Mom has been so confused. Yesterday she wanted to go for a walk at 10 at night because she thought it was morning." It was a complete fabrication. I saw the pity in Letitia's eyes as she looked at me. "It's a good thing you have Grace," she said. Then came the specialists, doctors for blood pressure, social workers to evaluate my living conditions, a geriatric care specialist, all scheduled by Grace, all without my consent. I heard one of them tell her in my living room, "I'm going to note she shows signs of mild age-related confusion." I was standing in the kitchen, perfectly lucid, listening to this stranger write a lie that would become a weapon in my daughter's hands. I felt the walls of my own life closing in. My independence, my autonomy, my very sanity were being systematically stripped away, piece by piece, with smiling faces and words that pretended to be love. I was living in a carefully constructed nightmare, and the architects were the 2 people I loved most in the world. The foundation of sacrifice I had spent a lifetime building was being used as a weapon against me. But the moment that would bring the entire structure crashing down was still to come. It would arrive not with a confrontation, but with a simple, accidental tap on a phone screen. "We have arrived at the moment that split my life in 2. The moment the careful, poisonous facade my daughter had built finally shattered, revealing the chilling truth beneath. That Tuesday afternoon, the air in my own home was thick with a tension I could no longer ignore. Grace and Richard had been whispering all morning, their voices a hushed, secretive hum that stopped the moment I entered the room. They left abruptly, muttering something about work matters. But the look they exchanged was not about work. It was a look of conspiracy. I was alone. The house, my sanctuary, felt like a gilded cage. Everywhere I looked, I saw evidence of their takeover. Grace's new dishes in my cupboard, Richard's expensive coffee on my counter. I was a ghost in my own home. To calm my nerves, I went to make some chamomile tea. That's when I heard it. The chime on my phone. A voice message from Grace. My first foolish thought was one of hope. Maybe she was checking in. Maybe she was telling me they'd be home for dinner. How naive I was. How desperately I still clung to the ghost of the daughter I thought I had. I pressed play, and the world stopped. Ricardo, I can't take having my mother in this house anymore. It was Grace's voice, but it was a stranger's. Stripped of all warmth, it was cold, sharp, and dripping with the contempt that felt like a physical slap. She's a nuisance. The word echoed in the silent kitchen. A nuisance, like a buzzing fly, a leaky faucet. She gets into everything, and on top of that, we're already spending so much money on her. My mind raced. The money? The money I was giving them every month? The money from my pension? From the savings I had scraped together over a lifetime? I've been looking into some cheap places. I found one on the outskirts that only costs $800 a month. A cold dread, colder than any I have ever known, began to spread through my veins. She was pricing out my imprisonment. My own daughter was shopping for a storage unit for her mother. But then, it got worse. So much worse. Also, I've already checked all the house papers. It's in her name, but Carol already explained how we can transfer it to our name without her realizing. The floor fell away from beneath me. My legs buckled. I slid down the kitchen cabinet, landing hard on the cold tile floor. My house. This wasn't just about putting me away. This was about erasing me, stealing the very walls that held my memories, the roof I had built over my daughter's head, the $485,000 I had earned on my hands and knees. It's going to be about $500 in bribes and fees, but it's worth it. Her voice was so casual, so transactional. My life's work was worth $500 in bribes to her. I already spoke with the director of the St. Francis home. Her tone shifted, becoming clinical, like a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. I explained the situation. I told him that my mother has early-stage dementia and that it's dangerous for her to live alone. He was very understanding. He says they see cases like this all the time. Lies. All lies. She was painting a picture of a confused, helpless old woman to a stranger, signing papers to have me institutionalized. She was building my prison with paperwork and false smiles. And then I heard it. Richard, in the background, laughing. A chuckle of agreement. The man I had welcomed as a son was laughing as my daughter planned my destruction. "The plan is perfect, honey," Grace continued, her voice bright with sinister triumph. "Next Tuesday, we're going to tell her she has a routine medical appointment. We'll take her to the home, check her in, and by the time she realizes what happened, she'll already be inside." A Trojan horse of betrayal, using my trust in her as the weapon to deliver me into captivity. But the final blow, the one that seared my soul and extinguished the last ember of the mother I used to be, was still to come. In a month, Mom will be in the home and we'll own everything, she said, and then she laughed. A light, carefree laugh I had heard 1,000 times, but now it was the most horrifying sound in the world. We can finally live in peace without that bitter old woman controlling us. Bitter old woman? After a lifetime of giving only sweetness. That's what she saw. And then the unforgivable. Besides, the life insurance she has is in our name. So if something happens to her at the home, she paused, as if even she couldn't believe the words she was about to say. God forgive me for saying this. It wouldn't be so bad. Silence. The message ended. The room was spinning. I sat on that cold floor, the phone still clutched in my trembling hand, and I played it again and again. Each word, each callous laugh was a nail hammering the lid shut on the coffin of our relationship. The pain was a living thing, tearing me apart from the inside. But then something else began to rise through the agony. It started as a spark in the frozen darkness of my heart, a cold, clean, furious determination. They thought I was a weak, naive old woman. They thought I would go quietly. They had forgotten who they were dealing with. They had forgotten the woman who worked 12-hour days on her feet, the woman who stared down poverty and refused to blink, the woman who built a home from nothing. They had awakened the mother who had fought for her daughter her entire life. And now, that same ferocity would be turned to fight for herself. I did not sleep that night. I paced my house, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I looked at the photos on the walls, the smiling little girl, the proud graduate, and I said goodbye to each of them. That girl was gone. The mother who loved her unconditionally had to be put away too. At dawn, I stood before my mirror. I saw a 66-year-old woman with tired eyes and a broken heart. And then I made a choice. I would not let them see that woman. I put on my most elegant crimson suit, the one I'd worn to her graduation. I applied my makeup with a steady hand. I styled my hair. I put on my mother's pearl earrings. I looked at my reflection, and I saw a warrior. I left a simple note on the kitchen table. Out running errands. Back this afternoon. Mom. No explanations. The time for explanations was over. My first stop was the bank. Nora, the manager who had known me for 15 years, greeted me warmly. Miss Baker, how can I help you? Nora, I said, my voice unnervingly calm, I need you to show me every transaction on my accounts for the last 6 months, and I need to know if anyone else has been asking about them. Her smile faded as she pulled up the records. Miss Baker, there are several inquiries here from your daughter, Grace. She presented a letter of authorization signed by you. She showed me the document. The signature was a clumsy forgery, similar to mine, but lacking its flow. The betrayal was so brazen it took my breath away. Nora, I said, sliding my ID across the counter, that is not my signature. My daughter has been fraudulently accessing my accounts. I want every authorization she has revoked immediately. I want every password changed. And I want to move every single cent into a new account that only I can access. Next, I went to the county clerk's office. I found Carol at her desk, and I smiled my sweetest, most grandmotherly smile. Good morning, Carol. Grace tells me you've been such a help with some paperwork for me. She jumped as if I'd electrocuted her. Aunt Margaret, what are you doing here? I just want to understand, I said, my voice still gentle, as I discreetly turned on the recorder in my purse. These insurance papers, why do you need documents with my name on them? She began to sweat, her story unraveling. It's just routine updates. I leaned in close, my smile never wavering, my voice dropping to a whisper. Carol, I know. I know about the forgeries. I know about the plan to steal my house. And I have the audio of Grace planning it all. Her face crumpled. She broke down in tears, confessing everything: the forged signatures, the fake medical reports, the $500 bribe. She gave me every document, every piece of evidence, begging me not to ruin her life. My final stop was the office of Attorney Harrison Ford. I walked in, back straight in my crimson suit, and placed the stack of evidence on his desk. The audio, the bank forgeries, Carol's confession. Attorney Ford, I said, my voice clear and steady. My daughter and her husband are trying to steal my home, my freedom, and my sanity. I have spent my life being kind. Now I need you to teach me how to be ruthless. He reviewed the evidence, his expression growing graver by the minute. Miss Baker, he said finally, looking at me with a mix of pity and profound respect. This is one of the most egregious cases of elder fraud I have ever seen. We will not just stop them, we will make an example of them. The next day, at exactly 10 a.m., my doorbell rang. Grace and Richard were lounging in my living room, oblivious. I answered the door to find Attorney Ford, 2 police officers, and a public notary. The look on their faces as we walked in, it was a tableau of pure, undiluted shock. "Mom, what is this?" Grace demanded, her voice shrill. I didn't answer her. I looked at Attorney Ford and gave a single, slight nod. "Miss Grace, Mr. Richard, we are here on behalf of Miss Margaret Baker to inform you that we have irrefutable evidence of your conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and illegal appropriation." As he laid out the evidence, piece by damning piece, I watched the color drain from their faces. But the crescendo, the moment that shattered their entire world, was when I took out my phone. "Would you like me to play it for everyone, Grace? The message you sent me by mistake?" I pressed play. Hearing her own voice, filled with such venom, echo through the room she planned to steal, it broke her. She screamed, she denied, she lunged for the phone. But it was too late. The truth was out. As the police officer handcuffed my only child, she looked at me, her eyes wild with a mix of terror and hatred. "You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter." I looked back at her, my heart a fortress of ice. "No, Grace," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but it carried across the room. "You stopped being my daughter the moment you decided I was worth more to you dead than alive." The door closed behind her. The silence that remained was the loudest sound I have ever heard. It was the sound of a life ending and another, fiercer one beginning. We have walked through the fire together. We have faced the deepest betrayal a mother can know. But today, I want to share with you the most important chapter of all, the story of what rises from the ashes. After the door closed that day and the sirens faded into the distance, A profound silence descended upon my home. It was a heavy silence, thick with the ghosts of what had been and the terrifying emptiness of what was to come. I was alone, truly alone for the first time in my life. But in that silence, I made a choice. I could let this destruction be the end of my story, or I could use the rubble to build something new, something stronger. I chose to build. The battle was not over. The legal war had just begun, but a more insidious conflict was launched against me, a campaign of terror and smears. Grace and Richard, desperate, fought back in the only way they knew how, with lies. Fake social media profiles appeared, posting in local community groups, "My mother has senile dementia and has falsely accused us," they wrote, alongside edited photos of me looking confused. The comments from strangers were a knife to the heart. "Poor woman," they'd write. "How could a mother do this to her children?" The phone calls started next. In the dead of night, anonymous voices would hiss threats and insults. "You're a miserable old woman. I hope you die alone." Anonymous letters filled with poison arrived in my mailbox. "You're a failed mother," one read. "You raised a daughter who hates you. Think about what you did wrong." For a moment, I wavered, sitting on my kitchen floor just as I had when I first heard the audio. I broke down. The weight of their hatred, the public shame, the isolation, it was crushing me. I thought about dropping the charges. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe this was all a terrible misunderstanding. In my deepest despair, I remembered a treasure. I went to an old chest and pulled out a letter my mother had written me before she died. Her shaky handwriting was a lifeline across the decades. "My dearest Margaret, if someone tries to hurt you or take advantage of your good heart, remember that you are stronger than you think. Don't allow anyone, not even your own daughter, to trample on your dignity. True love never seeks to destroy, never seeks to steal, never seeks to humiliate. You deserve respect. You deserve genuine love. You deserve to live your final years in peace and dignity." I read those words, and something solidified inside me. My mother was right. What Grace felt for me was not love. It was a transactional calculation. I would not dishonor my mother's memory by surrendering my dignity. I called Attorney Ford. "Do not drop a single charge," I told him, my voice clear and firm. "We see this through to the end." And so I fought back, not with their weapons of lies and manipulation, but with the unassailable power of the truth. When they offered an out-of-court settlement to avoid a public trial, I agreed, but on my terms. They would return every stolen cent, pay damages, and most importantly, sign a full public confession. They had to publish, in the same forums where they had slandered me, a statement admitting that I was mentally sound and that they had orchestrated a criminal plot against me. Watching them sign that document was more satisfying than any jail sentence. I had reclaimed my name. With the legal battle over, it was time to rebuild my life, brick by brick. My first act of liberation was to sit with Attorney Ford and rewrite my will. I left every single asset, my house, my savings, everything, to the Golden Hope Foundation, a charity for abandoned seniors. I stipulated that if Grace ever contested it, she would receive nothing. My legacy would not fund the greed that tried to destroy me. It would comfort those who had suffered as I had. Next, I sold the house. The walls held too many ghosts. I bought a beautiful, sunlit apartment in a community for active seniors. It was mine, chosen by me, for me. No one could ever make me feel like a guest here. My revenge was not vengeful. It was the simple, inevitable consequence of their actions. We discovered they had committed tax fraud. As a responsible citizen, I felt it was my duty to report it to the IRS. The audit left them with a debt of $35,000, forcing them to sell their car and pawn their jewelry. Their own greed had bankrupted them. The public confession destroyed their reputations. Their names were in the newspapers. Grace was demoted at her prestigious job. Richard lost his chance at a promotion. Their friends, their social circle, even their own family turned away from them in disgust. They were pariahs, and they had no one to blame but themselves. But my greatest victory was not over them. It was within myself. At 67 years old, I finally discovered Margaret. Not the mother, not the victim, but the woman. I enrolled in a painting class and discovered a talent I never knew I had. The landscapes I create now sell at local fairs. I joined a dance class. Can you imagine this old body waltzing and laughing? Most importantly, I began volunteering at the Golden Hope Foundation. I sit with other seniors who have been cast aside, and I tell them my story. I see the light return to their eyes when they realize they are not alone, that they have rights, that they can fight back. We have helped dozens reclaim their stolen assets and their stolen dignity. In helping them, I have found a purpose that eclipses any pain from my past. About a year ago, I received a letter from Grace. It was full of apologies, of regret. She said she was in therapy, that she finally understood the magnitude of her betrayal. She wrote that she had lost the best mother in the world.
I wrote back. I told her I forgave her, not for her, but for me. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgiving her set my own soul free. But I also told her this: forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean reconciliation. It does not mean I will ever trust her again. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. I wished her well, but I closed the door forever. My dear friends, my story is not a tragedy. It is a testament. It is a testament that it is never too late to choose yourself. It is never too late to rediscover your strength. It is never too late to build a new family, not from blood, but from chosen bonds of respect and kindness. The greatest inheritance I can leave is not property or money. It is this lesson: that your dignity is non-negotiable, that true love does not hurt or steal or plot, and that no matter how deep the betrayal, your story is not over until you decide it is. You can rise. You can rebuild. You can paint. You can dance. You can help others. And you can find a peace more profound than any you have ever known. Thank you for walking this path with me. Your listening has been a part of my healing. Now, go out and live your life with the fierce, unshakable knowledge that you too deserve peace, respect, and joy. Be kind to yourselves, and may your lives be filled with truthful, protective, and enduring love.